What is form here? Form is responsible for collecting the user input. What is HTTP stands for? Hypertext Transfer Protocol, used to enable communication between client and server. HTML forms are used to send the user information. Text box allows the user to provide the single line input. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on 4th unit, that is nothing but the form handling. I'm your Revati ma'am, faculty from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram, 1st grade college, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. In my today's session, I'm going to deal with form handling. Before going to start my today's session, let me to recall the topic what I have discussed in my last session. In my last session, I started with class. What is a class? Class is nothing but a blueprint or template. Along with that, I have discussed how to create a object. Object is nothing but the instance of the class. By using object, I can able to access the functionalities of the class. So we can able to create object using new keyword or new operator. Along with that, I have discussed the concept called inheritance. So what is inheritance? Inheritance is nothing but the feature of object-oriented programming. We can able to create a new class from the existing class. That concept is known as inheritance, and PHP supports only single inheritance. These are the concepts I have discussed in my last session, but in my today's session I'm going to deal with form handling, in the sense how we can able to create a form in PHP. So dear student, we know that we are going to use PHP for server-side scripting, and I'm going to include or embed PHP with my HTML. And in HTML, form is very important concept. Why I use form? In order to collect the input from the client or user. Now, if I consider PHP, okay, form plays very important role, or it is a fundamental component, okay, that allows the user to accept the input. In the sense what? It's mainly used to give the or collect the input from the user. So PHP form is a fundamental component in web development. So if I consider web development, I have the concept called form, and forms are the way used to collect the user input, and it allows the user to submit the data to a server. Okay, fine. Dear student, you are familiar with your result. Okay, fine. You are going to get the information that, okay, result is out. Now what you're going to do? You're going to search the result. So you're going to search the result. Okay. Now you're going to get the form. So here you have the USN. Okay, fine. At the same time, you have to give the input. So you want to feed the input. So you want to enter the USN. At the same time, you have the option, that is date of birth, and you have to fill the date of birth. And you have the button called submit. You have the button called submit. Okay, fine. Now, where I'm going to get this user interface? In my client system. Think that I'm the client. Okay, in my client system, I'm going to get this interface. Okay, this is nothing but the graphical user interface. Okay, I'm going to get this interface. Now what I will do, I'm going to enter the USN. For example, say U1234 and date of birth, some date of birth, I'm going to enter. Okay, when I press submit, what's going to happen? This data is submitted to the server. Okay, this data is submitted to the server. The job of the server is to process the data. Okay, what's my requirement here? My USN name and date of birth. If my USN number and date of birth informations are present at the server, okay, now what the server is going to do? Server is going to process the data and it's going to send the response back. So what is form here? Form is responsible for collecting the user input. So it allows to enter the data and it is responsible for submission of the data to the server. So it provides an interface. So it's an interface for the user so that user can able to enter the input. In the sense what? User can able to interact with the website. PHP offers various functions and features to handle the form processing. So the form processing may be form validation. So verify the form is known as form validation, data sanitization and data storage. Okay, so PHP form offers what are the facility? Form validation, form sanitization and data storage. So what is validation? Validation is nothing but the verification. Okay, fine. Dear student, we are familiar with the Google login, right? Google login. So we have the username, okay, and we have the password. So while entering password, okay, I want to write the rule. Okay, that's nothing but the validation. So what is the rule I want to follow? So see here, I can have the uppercase, I can have the lowercase letters along with the digit, and my password must have any special symbols. Okay, I can have the uppercase, lowercase, digit and special symbols. That's nothing but the validation. Okay, now with PHP form, developers can able to create dynamic and interactive web page so that user can able to enter their input and they can able to perform the action, okay, and they're going to get the output based on the input. So users are responsible for entering the input, okay, and servers are responsible for processing the result, and the processed result is sent back to the client. Now if I consider PHP form plays very critical role in applications such as contact form. In the sense what? When I want to collect contact information, okay, registration form, we have online registration, right? Okay, for that we can have the online registration form, we have the login forms, okay. So when I collect the sensitive information, okay, I want to take care of the application, okay. Application is nothing but the forms. So HTML forms are used to send the user information. Now in PHP, okay, to collect the user information, what I will do? I'll go with the HTML form. Now how I'm going to create a form? For that, I'm going to have the tag called form. In HTML, I have the tag called form, okay, and I can have the form element, and this form must have the closing form tag. Now in PHP, to collect the user information, I'm going to use the forms, okay. So in PHP, I can able to embed PHP with the HTMLs. For that reason, I'm going to use the HTML forms. Now, if I consider form, I have the attribute. So how I'll write? Okay, I have the form tag, okay, and I can have the attribute. And if I consider the attribute, I have the action called URL. My action always URL. So I'm going to specify, okay, to which web page I want to link. So I'll write the complete URL. So I'm going to write the complete navigation to where, okay, and how I'm going to collect all the web page information I'm going to write in my action. So this attribute usually has a link to web page that contains code which process the form. Okay, so your action is nothing but the URL. Next, method. If I consider form, I can have two methods, get method and post method. Get in the sense what? Get the data from the resource. And post in the sense what? Where I want to post the data. So here I can able to use two methods. One is get and another one is post. So this attribute specifies how the information is sent. Get, okay, with a get method. So how I'm going to send the data? For that I'm going to have the get method. All the information is sent in your URL string. So what is URL? Universal Resource Locator. And if I go with post method, all the information is sent but invisible to the user. So if I go with the get method, okay, I can able to view the information in my URL. But if I go with the post method, I cannot able to find any information in my URL. So it is invisible to the user. And I have the name. Okay, suppose if I want to specify the name of the form, then I can able to specify. When creating complex form and using scripting, you may need to specify the name. So specify the name of the form. The name should be unique. So while specifying the name of the form, and if I have two, three forms, then I want to specify the unique name for each form so that I can able to identify the form uniquely. Now, okay, what are the controls I can have in my forms? So think that, okay, this is your Google form. So this is your Google form. Okay, fine. Now what I want to do? I want to get student information. For that, I'm creating the Google form. So what I will do, I'll write, okay, name. So I'm going to provide the box so that user can able to input their name. Okay, fine. Then I must have the gender. Okay, then, okay, I'll provide, okay, they have to select their combination. For example, B.Ca, B.Ba and B.Com. Okay, at the same time, they have to submit the form. So I'll give the button called submit. So here, text box, labels, okay, checkbox, button, these are the controls. Okay, these controls are used to design the form. Now, see here, okay, form processing contains a set of controls. Through that, client can able to provide the input. Now, the most common form control is text box. Text box in the sense what? User want to provide the input. So text box allows the user to provide the single line input. Okay. So by using single line, by using text box, I can able to access only single line input. Then what about text area? When user want to provide multiple line input, then we will go with the text area. Multiple line in the sense what? More than 2 lines. Then drop down. Drop down or combo box allows the user to select a value from a list of value. So see here, this is your drop down. When I select this one, I want to get a long list of information so that user can able to select one information. So that's nothing but your drop down. Now if I consider another control, that is nothing but the radio buttons. So what is radio buttons? Radio button allows the user to select only one option. So when I can have the radio button, for example, if I consider gender, either I can have the male or I can have the female. So I want to select one option at a time. So I'll go with the radio button. There are certain time I want to select multiple option, then I'll go with the checkbox. So checkbox allows the user to select multiple option. Okay, suppose if I want to select B.Ca, okay, then if I want to select B.B.A, okay, then what I will do, I'll go with the checkbox. Then what about submit? That is nothing but the button. So buttons are the clickable component. So when I press the button, okay, what's going to happen? The event is going to trigger. Okay, this button is going to trigger, and okay, this button is responsible for submitting the form to the server. Okay, fine. These are the some of the controls. Okay, fine. Now let's create a simple HTML form. We know that we are going to embed PHP in my HTML. So I'll start with the HTML, and if I want to give the name to the form, so I'm going to give the title, that is simple form processing. And see, here I'm creating the form. So I'll start with the form, and I want to specify the ID, because in one single HTML I can able to include multiple forms. Okay, for example, I have form 1, I have form 2, and I have form 3. 3 forms. So I want to identify these forms uniquely. For that, I'm going to have the ID. Okay, then I want to write the method, as it get or as it post. Okay, fine. Now see here, first, I want to get the first name. Okay, in front of that, I want to read single line input. For that, I'm going to have the, text box. So dear student, here input is nothing but the tag, where type is nothing but the attribute used to specify the type. Okay, so here I am using text box, so it is text. In the sense, what kind of input I'm using. For example, if I'm using text box or text area, radio button, checkbox, I want to specify that one. What kind of control I'm using. Then name. Okay, I want to give the name. So I'll write first name. Okay, it is compulsory. I want to provide the input compulsory. So I'll write required. Then in the next field, next line, what I want to get? I want to get the last name. Okay, to enter the last name, once again, I'm considering the text box. Okay, so what is the name of the text box? That's nothing but the last name. Then, I want to get the address. So it is multi-line, right? So input, type, text area, name, what? I'm going to give the address. Okay, fine. Then email address. So what kind of control I can have? The control is email. See here, in my HTML5, I can have the email, even I can have the controls like password. So what's my input type here? Email. Okay, so what is the name of the control? Mail address. Next, what is my input type? Password. Okay, so what is the type of input? It is password. What is the name of the input? It is password. Okay, then I want to have the button. So it is nothing but the type. So what kind of input? Type. Okay, what kind of input here? Submit. So it is a button. Okay, and what is the value I must have on my button? That's nothing but the submit. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to close the form. Now I'm going to close the body and I'm going to close the HTML. And if I see the output, how it's going to look. First name, I'll write F name, colon, okay, you're going to get the text box. Then L name, colon, text box. After that, address, okay, once again text box. Next, email, address, once again text box. Then your password, once again text box, and the button, it is submit. Okay, this is the expected output. Now see here, I'm going to use HTTP get and post method in my form. So what are the two methods I can have in my form, either get or post? Now the hypertext transfer protocol, what is HTTP stands for? Hypertext transfer protocol used to enable communication between client and server. When I want to enable the connection between client and server, what I will do, I'll go with the HTTP. So that is nothing but the hypertext transfer protocol. Now HTTP works as a request response protocol between client and server. When I use HTTP, okay, it acts as a request and response. So request in the sense what? Client is going to do the request. Okay. Who is going to provide the response? That is none other than server. For that reason, HTTP works as a request response protocol between client and server. So a web page, that is a web browser. What is web browser? It's a application software where we get our output on the browser. And example for browser, Mozilla, Opera, Chrome. Okay, these are the example for the browser. Okay, a web browser may be the client and an application on a computer that hosts a website may be a server. My browser is nothing but the client. Okay, application is nothing but the server. So a client, that is none other than browser, okay, submits an HTTP request. Who is going to submit? Client is going to submit the request, and who is going to provide the response? That is none other than the server. Okay, fine. The response contains status information about the request, okay, and may also contain the requested content. In the sense what? Client is responsible for requesting the resource, and who is going to responsible for providing the response? That is none other than server. So client sends the request. Now the server is responsible for accepting the request, process the request, and send the response back to the client. Okay, and if I consider HTTP, what are the two commonly used methods? That is get method and post method. If I use get method, okay, what is the job of the get method? Request data from a specific source. So I'm going to request the data from this specific source. In the sense what? From where I want to get the data, okay, I'm going to request by using get. And what about post? I'm going to submit the data. Okay, submit the data to the processed to a specified source. In the sense what? To whom I want to submit. Okay, that is done by using post. Okay, fine. Let me to consider this simple example here. Okay, how we can able to use the get method. So it is my HTML code. What is the title of the form? Get form. Okay, now I have the body. So I'm getting the message get form, and I have the form. In my form, I'm using the method called get, and I'm going to specify the action from where I want to get the data or form. So that's nothing but the process form.php. Now, okay, I'm going to have the label. Okay, what I'm going to give name. I want to have the name in my label. Okay, fine. Then in front of label, what I must have? I must have the text box. For that, I'm going to have the input type called text. Okay, and I'm going to specify the name of the text box. Okay, at the same time, okay, I'm going to provide the ID of the text box. Okay, now see here, I must have the email. So for that, what I will do, I'm going to use the input type called email. If I want to have the message, okay, then what I will do, I'll take the text area. When I take text area, when I want to read multiple line input, when I want to have multiple line input, then I'll go with the text area. Okay, fine. Then at the end, I must have the button. Okay, for that, I'm going to consider the type button. Button is nothing but the submit. And what is on my button? I must have the value or text on the button. That is nothing but the submit. And I'm going to close the form. I'm going to close the body. I'm going to close the HTML. This is the way I can able to use get method in my HTML, okay, in my PHP as well as in my HTML. Anyway, dear student, in my today's session, I started with what is form. Forms are nothing but the way used to collect the input from the user, okay. So how we are going to collect the input from the user is nothing but the form. Now, okay, along with that, I have discussed what is get method, what is post method, how to use get method and how to use post method. Anyway, this is all about how we can able to handle forms in HTML. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next chapter, that is nothing but the database handling using PHP with MySQL. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with the new chapter, that is nothing but how we can able to handle database in PHP. Anyway, dear student, thank you for watching my session and let's meet in the next session with more information about PHP. Thank you.